government now requires public and private employees working on site to be vaccinated against COVID-19. And it's all too well for Swifties as American pop star Taylor Swift releases her award-winning album again. As presidential daughter and Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte gears up for the national elections, her father's party, the PDP Laban, is hinting at major changes. Our Amor Santos joins us now for details. Amor, can you tell us first, do we know now which position Mayor Sara is gunning for, or are we going to wait a little bit longer?
Well, Pia, according to Mayor Sara Duterte's new political party, the Lakas TMD, her final plans for 2022 will most likely be known within the weekend after a jam-packed day yesterday, flying to Balesin for a birthday party, then to Cavite for a wedding where she also took her oath as Lakas TMD member. The mayor is back in Davao City. She appealed to supporters and members of the media to avoid camping out at the Commission on Elections in Manila in anticipation of her substitution of Lakas TMD's presidential or vice presidential bet. After weeks of waiting and speculation, House Majority Leader and Lakas TMD President Martin Romualdez asked for more patience, saying consultations are still ongoing. That includes whether Mayor Sara and presidential aspirant Bongbong Marcos will run as a tandem.
I don't foresee a conflict. I think Mayor Sara and former Senator Bongbong Marcos are good friends. They've been communicating, they've been in dialogue. All of this will unfold. As they say, ilang tulugan na lang at matatapos na itong, how should I say, speculation period, and there will be more clarity. But alalahan lang po natin ay napaka-importante itong desisyon.
Now that Mayor Sara is with Lakas TMD, the ruling PDP Laban party announces possible changes in its standard bearers. In a statement, the party says it's studying all options, including going back to their original plan of fielding Senator Bongo for president with their party chairman, President Duterte, as his running mate. Go earlier slid down to the vice presidential race after the chief executive announced his retirement from politics. Senator Bato de la Rosa filed his candidacy for president, but has repeatedly said he's willing to give way to Mayor Sara. Back to you.
Amor, did PDP Laban explain why it is now considering a Bongo-Rodrigo Duterte tandem, and has Senator Bato de la Rosa officially decided to withdraw his candidacy as presidential candidate for the ruling party?
Well, actually, we've been asking for explanation from PDP Laban officials as well as Senator Bato de la Rosa. Earlier this afternoon, we called their Secretary General Melvin Matibag, but he said they were still in a meeting. Senator de la Rosa has also not responded to our requests for comment yet. Pia.
Amor Santos there reporting. A top Lakas CMD party official floating the idea of sharing the 6-year term presidency between Sara Duterte and presidential aspirant Bongbong Marcos. But the former senator rejects the proposal. Our Rex Remigio trailed Marcos in Batangas. Joins us now from Taal Town. Rex, why is the son of the former dictator not keen on term sharing, let's say, with Mayor Sara Duterte?
Well, Marcos says changing of the guard is not a good formula for stability if this will happen every 3 years. He explains that even if he shares the presidency, like for example with Mayor Sara Duterte, whom he treats as an ally, if one will be president for the first 3 years and the vice president will take over to be the president for the next 3 years, he says that this will require them to change administrations, cabinet members, and this would also mean uncertainty in some policies.
The reason why it is 6 years is because we want some stability in the policies of government. And if we change government every 3 years, which is effectively what the term sharing scheme you're saying will do, then urong-sulong na naman tayo.
So far, Marcos says he'll continue most of President Duterte's policies. Earlier, Marcos even offered to adopt the president to be his vice presidential running mate. But the chief executive suddenly withdrew his certificate of candidacy to give way to Senator Bongo. Now, Marcos is firm on his presidential bid.
Aming nagkakalat ng balita na sinasabi daw ay ako'y aatras. May kilala ba kayong Marcos na umatras?
We can recall, however, that her mother, Imelda Marcos, withdrew from the 1998 presidential race. However, in his speech before supporters, Marcos says he's still hoping for the backing of the administration. He also says he's open to an alliance with Mayor Sara's new party, the Lakas CMD. The Bongbong Sara Alliance has been proposed by his cousin, later Representative Martin Romualdez. However, it has yet to materialize given that Marcos is bent on seeking the presidency, while Sara, although still mum on her next move, seems to be eyeing the same post.
Just in case she runs for president, are you ready to face her?
Again, I am running for president, full stop.
So far, Bongbong says, and she has no any plans, or Bongbong and Sara have no plans of meeting over the weekend. When he was asked if he's open to the idea of running without a vice president, he simply says it can happen. Back to you.
Well, Rex, term sharing, of course, for the Senate presidency, the House speakership, that's happened before, but for president, that's Sino. But why is Bongbong Marcos now taking on Batangas, and how is it very important for presidential aspirants like him?
Well, Batangas is the 7th most vote-rich province with more than 1.7 million voters. Marcos, however, lost Batangas with a wide margin to Vice President Leni Robredo in the 2016 elections. But for the presidential aspirant, the 2022 elections is different. His Partido Federal ng Pilipinas is even claiming that they have the support of all but 3 mayors in Batangas. But if these kind of support will translate into votes come May 2022 elections, we still have to see if these will materialize. Back to you.
Rex and Media there reporting live from Taal, Batangas. An incumbent municipal councillor and 2 aspiring councillors were found dead in Daraga, Albay. Police say Peter Jomel de Leon Advincula, who was known as Bicoy when he made drug allegations against President Duterte in 2019, is now in custody as a suspect in the killings. A witness says Advincula fetched the victims one by one from their hotel in Legazpi City Thursday to attend a political meeting. The witness was also fetched but got suspicious of Advincula while in transit. She was able to escape and reported the incident to the police that night. Now, earlier this morning, Advincula appeared at the Daraga police station. He reported his discovery of the bodies inside a stall he frequently visits. While police say the case is almost closed, they are not ruling out the possibility that Advincula might be a fall guy. Advincula's wife, Amy, filed her candidacy as mayor of Donsol with Bicoy supposedly to substitute for her. It is unclear for now if this is an election-related case. The Armed Forces welcomes a new Chief of Staff. Lieutenant General Andres Centino succeeds General Jose Faustino Jr., who retired today. The Armed Forces praised Centino's integrity, management acumen, and desire for peace and development. It says these make him a competent leader who will guide the AFP and support national efforts to fight the pandemic. President Duterte and the Defense Department also expressed confidence on Centino's ability to secure the state and upgrade the country's defense capability. Now, before his appointment, I got to speak to Centino on the possibility of him taking command of the armed forces during the general's special presentation. Here's what he said.
It has to be the decision of the president.
But
yeah, I think we have grown to be a professional organization. We have matured and professional officers. They're all qualified, and I suppose it really depends on the recommendation of the SND and the decision of the president.
Centino is a member of the PMA Maringal class of 1988. He will lead the AFP until his retirement in early February 2023, which will make him the longest serving among the 11 AFP chiefs under the Duterte administration. Now, the new National Police Chief, vowing to make sure elections next year will be peaceful and orderly, Lieutenant General Leonardo Carlos replaces General Guillermo Eleazar in a change of command ceremony this afternoon. Carlos says he will focus on the fight against insurgency, terrorism, and private armed groups, prepare for the polls. He also pledged to continue the cleanliness drive that Eleazar began, as well as fiscal transparency and the fight against criminality and illegal drugs through the so-called double-barrel finale version 2021.
We will further develop and strengthen our area police commands to make our operations on the ground more focused and aggressive as we strive to further deny insurgents, terrorists, and private armed groups the opportunity to sow terror in our communities, especially during the election period. Sisiguraduhin po natin na hindi masasayang ang boto ng ating mga kababayan at magtatagumpay ang ating halalan na walang bahid ng karahasan at katiwalian.
And like the new Armed Forces Chief, General Centino Carlos is also a member of the PMA Maringal class of 1988. He will serve as PMP Chief until his mandatory retirement age of 56 on May 8, 2022, just a day before the elections. In the meantime, Interior Secretary Eduardo Año hinting at a new career journey for Eleazar, but did not give other details. Eleazar is rumored to join presidential aspirant Ping Lacson senatorial slate as a surprise candidate. One of Partido Reforma's senatorial aspirants earlier said he will withdraw from the race, citing his low ranking in recent surveys. When asked about the matter, Lacson's running mate, Senate President Tito Soto, said to just wait for their announcement on Sunday. Coming up on Newsnight, the government issues a new policy in a bid to bring up the vaccination numbers, mandating the inoculation of on-site employees. And planning to visit Boracay anytime soon? We've got good news for you after the break.
Totoo bang TJ also makes the cheesy yes?
Exhibit X, my cheese. Exhibit TJ, cheesy yes.
Totoo nga! Walang duda, kids can tell na ang cheesy yes ng number 1, Denver Juicy Cheese Dog. Pa TJ Cheese Dog ka naman!
Kabilang ba kayo sa mga Pilipino na nahihirapan sa mga
Welcome back to CNN Philippines. To ramp up the COVID-19 vaccination drive, the Interagency Task Force now requires inoculation for on-site workers in areas with enough vaccine supply. Our correspondent Tristan Odalo has the details.
Starting December 1st, employees working on-site are now required to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. This latest decision of the Pandemic Task Force is seen to increase the demand for COVID-19 vaccines.
Sa mga lugar na may sapat na supply ng COVID-19 vaccine na magpapabakuna ng kanilang eligible employees na nasa on-site work.
Workers in the transportation sector are also required to be fully vaccinated. Public and private establishments also have the right to refuse entry and deny service to unvaccinated individuals. A group of restaurant owners welcomes the decision of the IATF. They are also willing to provide more incentives to fully vaccinated customers.
No, maraming restaurants are over 90%. In my restaurant, we are 100%. We are not allowed to serve any customers indoors unless our staff are vaccinated.
But the IATF maintains that frontline and healthcare services must be given to anyone regardless of their vaccination status. The Pandemic Task Force also says those who refuse vaccination are required to present a medical clearance issued by a government health office and a birth certificate. Unvaccinated employees can't be fired from their jobs, but they should undergo RT-PCR testing or antigen test at their own expense. Employers suggest an alternative strategy for the unvaccinated, especially in the food business.
Maybe we can give them other assignments muna na walang interaction with customers.
Some workers weigh in on this mandatory vaccination policy that will begin next month.
Pabor po para din naman po sa kalusugan po at saka sa safety ng mga empleyado yun eh.
Pabor ako doon kasi para sa kapakanan na rin ng mga empleyado na dapat safety sila lagi sa trabaho nila at sa pamilya nila.
The Trade Union Congress of the Philippines also supports the IATF decision requiring vaccination of workers.
Well, una-una, yung mga no vaccine, no work, no pay ay unang-una, walang basihan sa batas. Ikalawa, it is deemed illegal by the labor code. Itong mandatory vaccination with exemption ng gobyerno ay sa tingin namin reasonable dahil meron namang exemption na binibigay.
The Interagency Task Force also urges government agencies and local government units to prioritize fully vaccinated people in government programs and services. Tristan Odalo, CNN Philippines.
The Labor Department says it will issue an advisory to guide employers and workers on the IATF resolution for mandatory vaccination. The agency will release this soon. In the meantime, labor group Hilusang Mayo Uno says that instead of mandatory vaccination, the government must grant a 2-day vaccination leave for daily wage and contractual workers. We'll have to wait a little bit longer for the revised guidelines on the use of face shields. The Interagency Task Force met Thursday to discuss the Health Department's recommendation to only require face shields in hospitals and enclosed public utility vehicles in areas under Alert Level 1 and 2. The IATF has forwarded its recommendation to President Duterte, but his spokesperson says he has yet to make a final decision. The President may also make the announcement himself. Several local governments earlier relaxed rules on face shield use, but Malacanang advised them to wait for Mr. Duterte's decision. Health experts are reviewing the mandatory quarantine guidelines for fully vaccinated international travelers. Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship, Joey Concepcion, earlier asked the IATF to remove quarantine rules for fully vaccinated passengers. Instead, Concepcion proposed to have them tested twice, first 48 hours before departure and again upon arrival in the country. But the Health Department says it still needs to check the science and data before easing measures.
So alam po natin, anything can happen in between when you go and travel from your point of origin to your country of destination. So kailangan talaga mabusisi po nating pag-aralan ito para hindi po natin magkakaroon tayo ng increased risk of infections. Maybe in the coming weeks after the IATF next week, we can already provide appropriate recommendations based on science and evidence.
In the meantime, a foreign affairs official says the IATF is not ready to lift facility-based quarantine for fully vaccinated travelers. TFA Undersecretary Brigido Dulay says authorities are looking into the possibility of shortening the quarantine period instead. A popular island destination is ready to welcome more visitors. Beginning November 16th, fully vaccinated tourists entering Boracay Island in Aklan will no longer need to present a negative RT-PCR test results, but they need to show a certificate from VaxCert-PH, the country's digital vaccine certification system. Vaccination cards from local governments will also be accepted. Aklan's governor says 90% of the island's tourism workers, as well as 70% of the eligible population, are already fully vaccinated.
Of course, the other requirements of the online health declaration card, the pre-bookings will still be there, but the RT-PCR test will now be removed by starting November 16 to really open up the business in Boracay in time for the holiday.
The tourism department welcomes the easing of travel rules. It says Boracay experienced a dramatic increase in tourist arrivals in the last 2 months, logging over 32,000 visitors in October. Meanwhile, the governor of another popular tourist destination appeals to the national government to work with local officials in efficiently uploading data on the VaxCert-PH system. Bohol earlier waived its RT-PCR test requirement, but Governor Arthur Yap says visitors struggle to get certification as their data have yet to be encoded. Prepare for a bigger electricity bill this month for those in the Meralco franchise area. The power distributor announced that the overall charge for November went up by 33 centavos per kilowatt hour. This should translate to 65 pesos more in the billing statement of a typical household consuming 200 kilowatt hours per month. The company attributed this to higher generation charges in line with the Malampaya natural gas facility maintenance shutdown for more than 3 weeks in October. The plant supplies 40% of Luzon's power needs. When we return on Newsnight, living up to their name, a K-pop group gives fans twice the excitement with an album and a music video. And Taylor Swift brings back a gift from the past and some new tracks for today's much-awaited release. We give you a sneak peek after the break.
Love is all about time. Di minamadali ang pagpapasarap. Like the
started, Emily Johnson and her husband Michael were preparing to leave for the hospital, but things progressed more quickly than expected.
The contractions went to 5 minutes and 3 minutes and 2 minutes and 1 minute. And we're like, oh, we gotta get in the car.
But the front lawn was as far as they would get.
I stood at the car and just said, no, I'm just gonna get on the grass and I'm gonna be here. This is gonna be my spot.
And so, with the help of her mother, who just arrived,
I'm on my hands and knees, and little head comes out.
Emily gave new meaning to home delivery, giving birth to their son, Thomas. And because their doorbell camera captured the entire thing, Emily and Michael can relive the surreal experience again and again.
Yep. That hurt.
Speaking of amazing feats of strength, check out the amazing strength in the feet of this 105-year-old sprinter. Her name is Julia Hawkins, and she's known as the Hurricane. And according to the National Senior Games Association, Hurricane Hawkins' recent zippy 100-meter dash at a Louisiana event made her the first 105-year-old female to set a track and field world record and the first to establish an age 105 and older runner category.
Wonderful. I'm so happy.
For Take a Look at This, I'm Jeremy Roth.
Welcome back. This one's for the K-pop fans. Twice's third full album, Formula of Love, has finally dropped. Among the 14 tracks is the girl group's first English single, The Feels, which marked their first entry in the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Apart from the new record, Twice also gave fans a music video for Scientist, which swiftly entered Twitter trends. Take a look. what do you know? The music video surpassed 1 million views on YouTube in less than an hour. Edition has added verses from Swift's original recording. A short film for the Heartbreak Ballad also comes out tomorrow. But for now, we give you a sneak peek at the much anticipated track.
The idea you had of me, who was she? I never needy, ever loved me, jewel. Who's trying to flex on you?
Joining in on the listening party, Starbucks Coffee, in celebration of the new release. They're playing Swift's songs in stores globally this weekend. And movie news now, before we go from the latest action flick to a prestigious new award. Here's CNN's David Daniel with Hollywood Minute.
Hello, boys. It's so nice to finally meet you in person.
Gal Gadot gets her villain on as she squares off with Dwayne Johnson and Ryan Reynolds in Red Notice.
I loved the character. It was refreshing for me to come and do something different, something that is a bit more villainy, evil, femme fatale, cheeky type of woman.
It was really beautiful to watch her so kind of, you know, mischievous and wily. And I got caught watching a bunch of times too, where I would forget my next line because I'm just sort of watching like a viewer.
Red Notice is now streaming on Netflix. Ava DuVernay is receiving a unique honor. The celebration of black cinema and television is giving the writer, director, and producer its first ever Melvin Van Peebles Trailblazer Award. Other honorees this year include Will Smith for his role in King Richard, Ruth Negga for her role in Passing, and the cast of The Harder They Fall will receive the Ensemble Award. The Critics' Choice Association's 4th annual celebration of black cinema and television is December 6th in Los Angeles. In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
It is 43 days before Christmas, and that is it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This program is brought to you by
Dynasties and surveys, two things in Philippine politics we both can't seem to live with and can't live without. Tonight, we'll try to make sense of them. Good evening, I'm Pia Ontiveros. Welcome to your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. Our guests for tonight, professional statistician and senior research fellow of the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, Dr. Jose Ramon Albert, House Deputy Speaker and Cebu 3rd District Representative Pablo John Garcia, and the Dean of the Ateneo School of Government, Dr. Ronald Mendoza. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome to the show. We're going to speak to you one by one, but first we're going to start with Dr. Jose Ramon Toots Albert. And the question here, the big question tonight is how reliable are surveys? Dr. Albert, of course, one of the countries, like we said, top statisticians, a former Benedictine monk, and a cancer survivor. Dr. Albert, I first listened to you, a talk of yours in the Jaime Ongpin annual memorial lecture about a week or so ago, and I thought it was a very definitive guide to surveys. Although it was a 1.5 hour, close to 2 hour talk, no, we're going to attempt to squeeze all that down to 8 minutes tonight. So we'll talk about surveys for elections. So let's begin with this, Dr. Albert. What kind of survey should we be wary of? What kind of survey should we be scared of, and why?
Well, let me just say that the ones that you should trust are probability surveys. There are other surveys that are being conducted that try to give a picture of just the respondents, but they do not necessarily represent the entire country. So these are the surveys that you should be worried about. The things like internet surveys, surveys through text, because they were not designed to give a good representation of the voice of the people throughout the country. Whenever you conduct a survey, essentially you need to make sure of representativeness. By design, you have to be very careful. So I would say not all surveys are equally good in terms of design and implementation.
Okay, by design. So hindi pwedeng random picking, like you don't go out into the street and then stop someone para mag-man on the street interview. Hindi ganon, no? That's not what we mean.
Well, yeah, the thing is, when you're doing that, when you say you're randomly picking on man on the street, the question there is, how sure are you that you're really doing something random, or you think it's random, but it's actually not? What you need to really do is have a protocol to actually select the respondents so that each respondent represents a certain group of people throughout the country. Unless you're able to do that, then I'm sorry to say that whatever results will just be representing the ones that you actually who responded to your survey, but they do not necessarily give a picture of what's really happening in the country.
Okay, what about Google Trends or social media, the number of likes or retweets on Twitter, the number of shares or likes or loves on Facebook or Instagram, for example? That's not like a survey either, right?
Yes, again, that's not reliable because the problem with things that are on social media is, first, not everybody's connected to the net. Second is, even if you think of Google, let's say you're trying to look at Google Trends, the problem there is that not everybody even knows how to Google, even if you're on the net. So you are, again, not getting a good reading of the entire country. You're missing out on, that's called a coverage error. You're missing out on the people who are not the people who know.
All right, we have a little bit of a problem with... Okay, you're back, Dr. Toots Albert. Okay, Dr. Albert, I wanted to ask you, let's define surveys, no? And then we're going to show, and that's why I referred to your talk at the JVO Annual Memorial Lecture, because we're going to use a lot from your PowerPoint presentation there. Let's define surveys first.
Yeah, well, a survey is supposed to be a way by which you collect data on a target population. The thing is, when you're doing a survey, you need to make sure that you're estimating, let's say, a percentage in the entire population. So you have to design it very carefully so that your respondents, the ones that that are part of your survey, will actually be representing a larger group of people in the population.
Okay. And can you tell us what the uses are? Because, usually people think survey, pang election lang yan. No? So that we can know kung sino nangunguna sa presidential race, for example. Hindi lang pang ganun, ano?
Yeah, well, the thing is, we always connote surveys with opinion polls, but actually there are a lot of surveys. Even government conducts surveys to get, for instance, a reading of the economic performance, to find out the inflation. So there are regular surveys conducted by government and by the private sector. And even the usual the usual outfits that you consider doing the opinion polls, they actually collect much more than just voter sentiment. They will also collect other things like, for instance, hunger statistics being collected by SWS, among other things.
The PITIC survey ng gobyerno, halimbawa?
The what? Sorry?
PITIC, you said? During that lecture?
Yes. The thing is, yes, exactly. So there are surveys that try to measure in government what's known as PITIC, presyo, trabaho, kita. So presyo means prices for getting information on inflation, trabaho, jobs, and kita. Trabaho, this is usually done again by a government agency called the Philippine Statistics Authority that does the labor force survey regularly. It used to do it every quarter, but now they're doing it on a monthly basis. And so with kita, when you think of income, there might be a way for you to think of national income from the GDP, the gross domestic product, but that uses various types of data sources. Surveys are used, but also administrative data, among other things.
I wonder how fast we can go through this question, Dr. Albert. What are the pros and cons, the good and bad of surveys?
Well, the thing is, if they're designed well, they can be able to give you very good information on what you're trying to get a picture of. For instance, whether it's the economy, whether it's voter sentiment, whether it's poverty, hunger, name it, because the thing is, we cannot always do a census. You cannot always wait until election day to figure out who's going to win. You need to get a sense, just like even going, for instance, to the hospital. You don't need to extract all your blood to determine if you're okay or not, Yeah, just a blood sample should be good enough, provided that the sample is representative. So that's the whole point. The thing is, the negative thing is that sometimes surveys, they do have not just what are known as sampling error. Sampling error is, they may not necessarily be 100% accurate in estimating the corresponding population parameter, like the percentages. But there may be also instances when people may misunderstand the question, or perhaps they do not respond to a question, in which case you have to make some adjustments. Or perhaps there might be some other errors, like even the interviewer himself may be forcing you to say something, or you may be afraid to express your opinions to somebody who's asking questions. So there are all of these extra things that are complicating the data. But by and large, if you have a survey outfit that's actually designed its survey well and implemented its survey well, and of course is transparent, in case there might be some funding sources, because it has costs, So you need to also make sure that you have to, there should be full transparency from these survey outfits.
And of course, Dr. Toots, that joke about not having all your blood extracted on just a sample, that refers to one of your statements that we should trust surveys that have like 2,000 or 1,200 respondents, like SWS and Pulse Asia, because they represent, because they do represent something. So mali din pala ang sinasabi ng mga politiko na the only opinion poll that matters is the one on election day. Now, I had so many more questions, but however, Dr. Albert, I just wanted to ask you this na lang, we've heard of all these opinion polling firms here in the Philippines, and you made a listing of them. Can we go very quickly through them? And tell us why it's important for us to know which of these firms are, and who are the credible ones.
Well, the thing is, for me, the point here is you have to look at track record. It's always easy to have new survey outfits come out, and I wouldn't trust them immediately unless they try to show. I mean, it's a question of trust. Nobody just, it would be foolish for us to just trust. You have to be skeptical of any surveys and survey outfits unless they have built their track records. So far, there have been two institutions, SWS and Pulse Asia, I mean, personally, that I would trust because they have shown very good track records. If you think of even the voting sentiment, people, the estimates of the proportion who will vote for a candidate tends to wobble. But towards the end, as it approaches election day, especially a month before election day, these two survey outfits have shown historically that they can do a very good job at estimating the actual percentages of people who will vote for candidates, so they can actually see not just for vice president, even vice president, and even the senators. I've studied them very carefully, and if you're interested, you can Google the lecture that you were referring to.
We do have a slide on that, slide number 40. You find the election surveys versus the actual votes, and it shows how close Pulse Asia and SWS are. But anyway, Dr. Albert, I want to say thank you very much for joining us. But of course, when you say yung Pulse Asia and SWS trusted, paano na yung siyam na iba pa?
Well, as I said, yung mga iba, unfortunately, they have to show us. They have to give us first a sense of reliability. If
Okay.
their estimates are, and if they do a survey that's pretty close to when SWS and Pulse Asia did their surveys, and the numbers don't seem to be too far away, then I would probably think maybe, but let's wait, let's wait a little bit more. I mean, they have to prove to us that they're doing a good job.
Alright, and sana may accreditation process na, no? Para pati kami sa media alam na namin. But anyway, Dr. Toots Albert, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We'll be back after a quick break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is Politics as Usual. From surveys, let's talk about political dynasties. Our second guest tonight comes from a well-known political clan in Cebu province. House Deputy Speaker Pablo John Garcia. And disclosure, my college batchmate at the Ateneo. Hi, Congressman PJ Garcia. Thank you very much for being with us. Well, let's begin with this. A definition of dynasty. Is that how you see your family? Would you say, yes, my family is a dynasty?
It's so difficult to answer that question because well, I can say we are a political family. My father has been in politics for a long time. I've been in politics for a long time. My sister and I are in politics, but that's a fact. We're a political family. But when you say dynasty, if we do not have a working definition of what a dynasty is, then I cannot answer it with a yes or no. My answer would be a matter of opinion and not a matter of fact. So we have to have a working definition of what is a dynasty.
Yeah. Well, right now, like you said, no, it's you and your sister, Governor Gwen Garcia. Your father has passed away, but you had two brothers who were in politics also. But so meaning, dahil dalawa lang kayo, hindi kailangan dynasty ang tawag sa inyo, or what?
Again, it really depends on what is the definition of dynasty. Is it the mere fact that two family members are in public service? Is that make it a dynasty? No, because we are working on a concept that has no definition yet. No? So we'll have to define what is a dynasty.
Yeah. Well, what about this, Congressman PJ Garcia? If you bring progress to your city or your province, does that make you a good dynasty? And if that is the case, so then what would constitute a bad dynasty? A family that does not bring progress to its city or province?
Well, I think it goes back to the question of whether you are a good public servant or not. I think dynasty would be a difficult concept to work with, no? And the fact that you say that there are good dynasties and there may be bad dynasties, then I think we should let the electorate decide which public servants are good and which public servants are bad. So it would be difficult to come up with a blanket prohibition of dynasties even if it were possible to define what a political dynasty is.
Yeah. Well, in the next segment of the show, we're going to have a guest, Dean Ron Mendoza of the Ateneo School of Government, who will be trying his best to define dynasties. And then I'm going to ask you, PJ, to respond to that. But let's go on. Why is there this fixation or focus on families when it comes to politics? Is it because all politics is local, and in local politics, it's the family that really runs things?
I think it is a natural consequence of the fact that, yes, even when you're starting out a political career, you first start with your family, and then we expand, no? And we try to cultivate extended families for your political machinery. No? So I think it is a natural consequence of how politics is here in our country.
Article 2, Section 26 of the 1987 Constitution says, and we quote, "The state shall guarantee equal access to opportunities for public service and prohibit political dynasties as may be defined by law," unquote. I've covered the House of Representatives. I covered your dad a long time ago, and no way, I think, in heaven or hell will an anti-political dynasty measure ever get passed. Now, the question is that a fair and accurate statement? And the corollary question is, how can you legislate this prohibition against political dynasties without violating, as you believe, constitutional principles like equal protection?
Yes, precisely. I think the Constitutional Commission, the defect there is that the Constitutional Commission could not come up with a working definition of political dynasty and left it to future Congresses to legislate. Now, several Congresses after the passage of the Constitution, still we do not have a working definition of what a political dynasty is. And it's not only because, as perceived, members of the Congress mostly come from political families, but there is really a very practical difficulty in legislating and banning political dynasties without violating certain constitutional principles.
Yeah.
For example, for a House member, the Constitution expressly provides for the qualifications and disqualifications. Can a law add to the qualifications and disqualifications under the Constitution? Second, wouldn't it violate equal protection? Thus, my being a member of a political family, disqualify me, therefore, from entering politics or public service.
Yung nga ang problema sa as may be defined by law, yun tuloy, hindi na defined. So, itong, the question, like you said, and like we all have noticed, and I did my own counting for every Congress. I would count the number of representatives who are members of political families, and easily 2/3, 3/4 at most ang miyembro ng political family. So can we really do away with political families? And I have a feeling, just by the look on your face, you're going to say no. But also, I wanted to ask, and pahabol na ito, because today, just today, Sara Duterte withdrew her certificate of candidacy, COC for re-election as city mayor of Davao. And of course, there's a lot of speculation about that. She's going to go for higher office. Is it going to be BBM Sara BBM? And then, therefore, the question here is, the Garcias of Cebu, the political family, the Garcia political family of Cebu, or Garcia political dynasty of Cebu, where are you going to be placing your bets for 2022?
Well, as Secretary General of our local party, One Cebu, we have already come up with a statement that we will decide on national alliances and our national candidates well after the November 15 deadline for substitution, because as you can see, for practical purposes, we can see that the situation is very fluid. We don't know eventually who will be the candidates and who will be withdrawing and who will be substituting. So, for practical purposes, our local party will have to wait until the deadline for the substitution, which is on November 15.
Right, Congressman PJ Garcia of Cebu, thank you very much for joining us. And like I said, please stay till the end of the show. More from our guests when we return. This is Politics as Usual. We're on our final stretch. This is Politics as Usual. Our third guest for tonight is the Dean of the Ateneo School of Government, Dr. Ronald Mendoza. Good evening, Dean Ron. Thank you very much for being with us. Is there such a thing as a good dynasty and a bad dynasty? Or they're all bad? Or as long as they don't field so many people, so many relatives in one election, good sila or whatever? At the same time, and we're going to be showing slides from your own PowerPoint presentation about dynasties. Talk to us about this definition that you want to present, no? Fat dynasties and thin dynasties. Sorry, ang daming tanong in one question.
Where to start? First of all, thank you very much, Pia, for the kind invitation. And permit me to speak in Taglish, so hopefully to communicate better to our people. Alam nyo kasi, yung tanong nung good or bad ba yung dynasty, medyo nakakatawa yung tanong na yan para sa akin kasi matagal nang tinatanong yan, no? Paano ba tayo napunta dito sa kailangan patunayan ng mga akademiko na bad yung dynasty para sa sistema natin, when in fact the framers of our constitution called for the creation of a law to define dynasties as part of the reform that was supposed to have been pushed as part of our democratic governance.
Yeah.
So the failure of our congresses to deliver on that law and that definition is the starting point of our conversation. It is supposed to be called for in the Constitution, and they have not actually acted on it.
But you could
right?
also expect them to legislate against themselves, hindi ba? Like I was saying kanina, 2/3, 3/4 of any one Congress is political families.
Exactly. And so it boils down, Pia, to us academics and independent thinkers being forced to make the case again to this nation and to our leaders na nakakasama tong dynastic leadership pattern sa ating demokrasya. At merong ebidensya na yan nga ang nangyayari. Habang dumadami ang fat dynasty, dinefine namin yan as those political clans with 2 and above family members. Pagka yan ang definition at nakikita natin yan sa iba-ibang parte ng bansa, humihirap yung lugar at nawawalan ng development push, nagkakaroon ng greater poverty and underdevelopment, particularly if you are outside of Metro Manila. Yan
sa mga liblib na lugar.
Empirical findings.
Yung Fat Dynasty,
and of course,
Dean Ron, yung Fat Dynasty, yung tinatawag na nga ninyo, and we have a slide, your slide to show that, no? Sabay-sabay. Tapos Thin Dynasty is sunod-sunod. Parang ini-inherit yung posisyon, and it can go downwards or upwards, or sideways. Magulang, anak, kapatid, in-law, di ba?
Yes, yeah. Yes, and in fact pareho lang ini-inherit. Magkaiba lang dahil yung sunod-sunod may konti pang delikadesa kasi ayaw nilang tumakbo ng sabay-sabay. So ang ginagawa nila orderly, nagsusunod-sunod lang sila, si lolo, si anak, si apo, hindi sila nagsasabay-sabay. Ngayon, sa ibang lugar, sabay-sabay na yung magkapatid, mag-ama, mag-ina, mag-asawa. Nagkakaroon tuloy ng Fat Dynasty, and that is the definition and pattern that is most associated with poverty and underdevelopment. Talagang pag nagsabay-sabay, nagkakaroon ng weaker checks and balances ang local government at nagkakaroon ng impunity, corruption, even violence, and definitely underdevelopment ang nangyayari.
Dean Ron, you have this table, no? Fat Dynasty percentage of total officials in province 2019, and the number 1 province here is Maguindanao, 50.54%, ranked 1.
Yes, and it's important to point out na hindi lang nasa south yan. Meron din tayo mga Fat Dynasty sa north at sa Visayas.
Well, Ilocos Norte is here, ranked 10. Cavite, ranked 14. La Union, ranked 17.
Yes. Maraming halimbawa, Pia, at nakikita natin that it has nothing to do with the Muslim South or that particular characteristic. In fact, meron ding mga halimbawa sa North, sa Visayas. Basta nagkaroon ng sabay-sabay na panunungkulan, napakahirap ng isipin na magkakaroon ng accountability. Una, kasi wala nang checks and balances. Magkakasabay na kayo makapangyarihan eh. Sino pa magsusuheto sa inyo kung mali yung ginagawa ninyo? So usually yung mga Fat Dynasty associated with corruption and impunity and underdevelopment. Yan ang nakikitang pattern. Pangalawa, pagka hindi na pinagpipilian natin, dapat sana yung matino at mahusay, pero ang pinagpipilian na lang, iilang pamilya. So napakahirap isipin na pumipili pa tayo ng mahusay at matinong pinuno who are capable of responding to the challenges, the deep challenges that we are facing as a nation, particularly now in a pandemic situation. Dapat sana yung pinakamahusay, pinakamatino, pinaka may kakayahan, pinaka may integridad. Pero hindi yan ang paraan natin ng pagpili. Ang pagpili natin, yung mga makapangyarihang pamilya, sila ang nagpipilian kung sino sa kanila tatakbo.
Pero meron din namang mahusay sa mga political families. But also, you know what? Ubus na oras natin. So ang pattern natin, mag-OT na naman tayo. And I wanted to ask PJ, and I asked him to stay pa naman to the end of the show. PJ, you want to say something? Pero 10 seconds. 10, 9.
Yes, you cannot generalize, Pia. No? I don't know. I have not seen the presentation of the good professor, but like in Cebu, for instance, the governor is my sister. I'm just one of 8 congressmen in the province of Cebu. So are we a fat dynasty? Is Cebu among those? So it is so difficult, to generalize on these things.
Yeah, PJ, I'll send you his presentation.
Yeah. I'm very interested to look at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Happy to give a briefing to Congressman Garcia.
Thank you very much to our guest tonight. Earlier, Dr. Toots Albert, Congressman PJ Garcia of Cebu, and Dean Ron Mendoza of the Ateneo School of Government. We've been told before, don't talk politics at the dinner table or the family reunion or in Viber groups and risk digital warfare, but we can talk about it here at this table on this show, your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. I'm Pia Ontiveros. See you back here next Tuesday, 8:30 p.m.